sense of awareness, of knowing, the knowledge or realization of any idea, object, or condition. It includes all that man is aware of, spirit, soul, and body. So with that in mind, Christ awareness refers to our knowledge that we are Christ, that we are God made manifest. I heard co-founder Anne Meyer McKeever say repeatedly, God doesn't use an assembly line. She meant that all beings, including human, differ from each other. That's even twins, identical twins, and that's all beings, blades of grass, hairs on a head, or fur on an animal. There's no repetition in existence, whether from being to being or moment to moment. Each is unique, and uniformity is a fantasy. I sense that life is fluid. It's a flow of experience. Life shifts from form to form, from experience to experience. We see this exemplified in daily life. A bird dies and falls to the ground. Leaves cover its body as ants remove part of it. It is covered by more and more leaves and soil as its substance just enriches the soil. Then a seed, like grass, a flower, a tree, something, a weed, takes root, and the enriched soil nourishes this plant. Some of the former bird is now a plant, and then becomes part of an animal that eats the plant, then the air that this animal exhales. Right? So this is part of the cycle, and the air could be the air that a bird inhales. God is creator, creative medium, and creation. That means God is all. I just talked about the bird and the soil and the seed and the animal and the air. God is the consciousness, the awareness that all this is, not has. God is. God doesn't have. Have implies that there is something outside God that God can get or not get. Okay? I have a pencil. I don't have a cup of coffee. Okay? Consciousness is all. God consciousness. It is a river of being, the river of being, unbounded, endless, river of life that is constant change. It knows to do this and knows how to do this. Its knowledge is action, is change, is infinite. God doesn't repeat or standardize God's self because God is not still, nor is God not creative. The assembly line of the same part after part, as in a factory that makes TVs, is a human concept, and it works for us here on Earth. Yet none of these same parts are ever really the same. They're the same enough for us to work with them. And there's always some kind of difference. Individuality. If there's no assembly line, we're all unique. And so is our Christ awareness. When we realize that we are one with the one that is God, we realize that we don't get absorbed by God to lose our sense of identity. We retain this identity. But we're one, but we're individualized within this one as parts of it. Individuality, we each have our own journeys to Christ awareness. So here's mine. It started during my childhood with the realization that I was to do something different with my life than the rest of my family. I didn't know what that was, but it was just a strong realization that occurred to me once when I was out in the country, roaming the fields, looking for, I don't know, cows or something, I don't know. Just having fun as a little kid. That was probably at least a partial beginning of Christ awareness. I'm sure it was. Also, I loved going to church as a child, and after we moved in from the country into our small town, there was a first congregational church within walking distance of our home. My sister and I walked there on Sunday mornings. I used to bug Mom to wake up my sister and make her go to church with me because I wanted to go and I didn't want to go alone. And she would go. She would go, but she didn't have the same desire that I did. Also, when I visited a friend's church, her evangelist preacher father's words, oh God, they were like a fire. They just inspired this powerful surge of energy within me. And it just was explosive, some kind of an awakening, some kind of Christ something, you know. As a young adult, however, I drifted away for several years. I just needed to do some other things for a while. Later on in my life, when I was a graduate student at San Diego State University, I realized that there would be another step after I established my desired teaching career. I believed it would be some sort of political activity, and maybe in a way it has become that. And I found the teachings of Mahatma Gandhi, and I read how his powerful, peaceful, nonviolent social action and his refusal to be swayed by fearful individuals, even while in prison, actually freed India from England's power without a war. Whoa. Some of his followers were killed, but think of that. You have such a God connection that you have no fear of even death. You have to be at that level in order to walk into the mouth of the lion, you know, and know that you're all right. And he did. A fearful individual at the end did bring his life to an end and killed him. But I'd never heard of such a thing. I'd never heard of that kind of power. And so, you know, it made a difference to me. I started meditating the best way that I knew how. Just kind of making something up. And I searched for a church. And I joined the Unitarian Universalist Church. That was a good place to start. I actually saw a stylized version of the interior of this place in a dream before my first service there. So I knew I belonged there. I stayed for about 2 years. When I needed to move on to my next spiritual experience, I searched and I attended different metaphysical classes, churches and meetings, you know, searching and searching. We don't buy shoes that don't fit, right? So I didn't want to stay somewhere that I didn't fit. And I became a student of Reverend Jean Napol's Saturday afternoon healing classes. The lessons also included meditation, prayer, and talks that he would give. Here I learned that I'd experienced at least one Egyptian lifetime, and with my present husband. He was there too in this lifetime. And I also honed my metaphysical healing skills. Pretty great. During one class, Reverend Jean didn't have a person to work on and heal, so he asked for volunteers. I stepped up. I said, okay, I'll do it. And so I've been diagnosed with TMJ, which never bothers me. But he worked on these symptoms because my jaw was popping and cracking at the time, and he worked on the symptoms with a regression so he could find the initial cause. He led me through an incarnation during the medieval era when I saw myself being knocked off my horse as an opponent struck me in the jaw with a lance. Just,
Ouch.
Oh, ouch. So some of the people there were people who were in my life at the time of the regression, and I could see the green of the plants around, and the scene faded. Reverend Jean took me back further to Jerusalem during Jesus' lifetime. I'm still connected to this so much. It's why I love Easter and I love Christmas. I was a young, small servant girl in a world that provided me a very little safety or independence, very little, no authority. I stood next to I remember standing next to a big man dressed in a long black robe who had power over me. I believe he was my master at the time, the master of the household where I served, and I was afraid of him. We were on a hill, and we were watching Jesus on the cross, surrounded by onlookers, by grief, fear, and the day's heat. We stayed until the end of his life. My master detested Jesus, but I believed him and I loved him. I loved him as so many others did, and because I was afraid, I said nothing about it, except for, to a few close friends and the household. I locked my expression. So that's where it had come from. Reverend Jean, while he led me into this, it faded. Right? It faded. I came back. Reverend Jean had led me in speaking about my regression as I'd gone through it, and there was a person who took notes, which was good. I came out of the session in shock and grief, as though I had just been there to witness the crucifixion of the person I'd loved so dearly, so intensely. And I had done just that. I'd been there again. I've stepped back into it. Guilt stunned me. It weighed me down because I'd said nothing. I just stood there next to this person dressed in black and with these Roman soldiers doing whatever they were doing. It stayed with me for years. After Reverend Jean finished these healing classes, I attended other classes than others and some others. At a certain time, I realized my path for the ministry was for the ministry, and I was studying in a different church. Then I realized this wasn't right for me, this organization. And that same day, I found information about the teaching of the Antichrist, or, TIC here. It was located in Lemon Grove, just a few miles away from my home. Oh, goody. An intersensitivity class was starting up the next day, Saturday. I joined the class, looking for a spiritual home that was based, a place that was truth, that taught truth, where I could learn, grow, and become a minister. TIC made sense. TIC does make sense. It was logical, and I understood the lessons, and the organization did not pressure me to see the world in only one way. I attended co-founder Ann Meyer McKeever's inner sensitivity classes. Her explanations, demonstrations, and answers to questions were clear and made sense. They rang true. They rang true. In addition, Anne just exuded her own incredible Christ love and power. I could feel it. And I was healed and lifted just being in her presence. During inner sensitivity, students all get their Christ signal and name. Sometimes the energy that comes with this shakes people, shakes their bodies. Sometimes it creates feelings of heat or cold. Sometimes there's something that speaks through. I expected that kind of drama, but none came. I got a name and a very gentle movement and signal. It was rocking back and forth, sitting. You know, I still have that. But it was so gentle that I felt uncertain anything had happened. I didn't want to just make something up. Anne helped me clarify it and realize, and then I realized that, gee, I'd already gone through some of this contacting, some of this inner Christ realizing. So, you know, it was just kind of renewing itself, kind of further defining itself for me. I took inner sensitivity repeatedly from Anne. After a while, I added other courses, and then I started attending Sunday services. I walked right by the little membership table where we could sign up for membership again and again, thinking, oh yeah, I'll do that someday. I'm going to stay here anyway. So one day I thought, I'm here. I'm not leaving. So take 1 minute and sign up. I did. And so I formally became a member. And I came here initially looking for a place to stay and study for the ministry. But you know, that memory of Jesus on the cross and my guilt, that darkness that I carried around about my silence and expressing my belief and my love, stayed with me. I had to reveal this, to confess it to Anne, and you know, along with a few other personal experiences. I knew of the teaching's stance on non-judgment and forgiveness, but I still needed her personal reassurance that I was, you might say, quote unquote, unstained and acceptable as a ministry student. I made an appointment. I told her my secrets of the crucifixion and other things. I cried because it was just, I just did. And she listened patiently, sat there calmly. There was no judgment in her eyes. No judgment. I mean, not even, you can't forgive something if you don't judge it as being bad in some way or the other. There wasn't even judgment in her eyes, you know? And I cried with guilt and relief that I could finally tell about this. And she only said, "You must be very strong. It doesn't matter what you did then. It matters what you do now. It matters what we do now, doesn't it?" She told me that it was very dangerous at the time and I could have been killed. She freed me. Rather, I freed myself through her, with her assistance, so I could follow my inner Christ, so I could follow Jesus. He had come for me. Again, I could say yes to him, and I did, and so here I am. And that's my individual journey. My individuality is I have expressed it, and that's my Christ awareness. I could say everyone would live in Christ, and it's the truth. Every individual is a Christ, is God made manifest. With our Christ realization, we still stay here in the earth, and wherever else we need to be. We just know God is omnipresent, and we are God made manifest. We are Christ's. I'm going to read this again from Revealing Word. Individuality is the true self, that which is undivided from God, our spiritual identity, the God part of us, that which characterizes one as a distinct entity or particular manifestation of divine principle. Individuality is eternal. Individuality is eternal. It can never be destroyed. So, our assignment for this coming week is to meditate on that. Individuality is eternal, can never be destroyed. So thank you for your time.
Thank you for yours.